We're back in Bandit level 12. Very first thing we have to check out is data.txt. Now I know some of the words are cut off, but basically what it's saying is that data.txt, which has the password, is a hex dump of a file that has been repeatedly compressed. And for this level, it may be useful to create a directory under the /tmp in which you can work. And then it gives us the command for like mkdir, which is the command we use to make a directory, because in Linux we have directories instead of folders. And then it says, or better, use the command mktemp-d, then copy the data file using cp and rename it using mv. And then it says read the man pages. Now, this is really interesting. So I like this level for a few different reasons. First of all, it's teaching us how to be able to copy and move files as well as make directories to be able to work in them. Why is this so important? I recently did a pen test where we were working with a lot of Linux machines and we were actually finding credentials and had to copy files and then use something called SCP to move those files onto our attack box to be able to perform like a pass the hash attack. But basically, being able to copy files, rename them, and even create temporary directories on our machine, that gives us a workspace to be able to keep notes, work on things, even echo things into it to see if it works. So being able to make new directories that we can use as workspaces is very important. So let's dive in and see what that looks like. Okay, so we're logged in. First things first, ls-lah. There's data.txt. Now, if we try, just to show you, if we try to cat data.txt, that is a hex dump. Okay, that is a very large hex dump. So we've got to figure out how to actually work with this. Now, of course, because OverTheWire is so amazing, they gave us that reading material of hex dump on Wikipedia. So let's check that out first. Okay. So essentially this is just giving us what a hex dump is, right? So it's computer data either from memory or from a computer file or a storage device. And it's usually done in the context of like debugging or reverse engineering or even digital forensics. So you can read through this just to kind of understand what a hex dump is. But essentially, we need to be able to take that hex dump and make sense out of it after copying and moving the file into a different directory and into a different workspace. Okay, so first things first, we're going to segregate this into kind of like 3 different steps to kind of make sense of it. This is just a lot of fucking data. So let's clear this out real quick. And then let's check out the manual pages, right? Because the manual pages are our best friend. So remember that OverTheWire, Bandit said that we could use mktemp to make the temporary directory in the tmp directory. So let's just look at what maketemp is real quick. -d for directory. Got it. Okay, but basically this is a temporary file or directory. Must contain at least 3 consecutive X's in the last component. Oh, that's really interesting. Huh. Okay. I don't know what that means, but let's just make it anyways, right? So quit, and we'll go into the TMP folder. Sure. Okay. So we're going to make temp, which means we're making a temporary directory in the TMP folder. And OverTheWire said make it just a crazy name. So we're going to make it code red 55876. See what that does. I mean, too few X's. Oh, I see. So I'm sorry, what now? Wait a minute. All right, it's not letting me list it, but let's see if we can just at least get in there, right? Oh, okay. So we know, okay. So we know the name of it. So mktemp is not a command I'm used to using. I typically use mkdir, right, for making a directory. But again, you are seeing everything that we're doing, even the mess ups. Okay. So next step, we need to copy the data.txt file, right? So what we can do is the copy command, which is CP. If you look in here, copy, we do CP, then the options, and then we put the source, and then we put the destination. So that copies the data. Okay. So basically, it's pretty simple. I mean, we really don't need to give it any arguments with this. But I'm going to do CP, and then we have the source. Now the source, if you look up here, there's this tilde sign. So we're going to do tilde / data.txt, and then we're going to do a dot. Now the reason I'm doing the dot, so in Linux, dot represents the directory that you're in, which is code red 55876 Alpha Foxtrot Zulu. Okay. Dot represents the directory above you. So that's why when you put in the command cd ... we're in, if we do cd ... it would move us from the directory we're in to the directory above us, which is /tmp. So that's important to know in Linux. So if we run this command, I copied it, allegedly, ls data.txt is right there. Now they told us to use the move command, or mv, to rename the file. If you look at the manual page for mv, I mean, mv, it moves a file instead of copying it. That's important to know through the command line. So if you use mv, like if we had used mv to move data.txt into this, data.txt would no longer be in the original home directory that we signed in on. Okay, so it would be gone. And the only copy of it would be in this current temporary directory. And if something happens, the machine automatically powers down, we could lose all that data. So that's why it's important to copy data, but then we can use mv to just completely rename it. Okay, so mv is, again, it's pretty straightforward. We just do mv, the source, and then the destination. So in other words, let me quit and go out of here. So if we do mv, the source is data.txt, and the destination, let's just call it hex dump. And then if you ls, we have hex dump instead of data.txt. So we use the move command just to completely rename it. Okay. So let's just clear this out. I like to use clear a lot just to clean things up. It helps me kind of stay a little bit more organized. Okay, so we've got this hex dump data. I popped this into Google real quick because I'm just going to do a Google search on, wow, is that really trending searches? That's hilarious. Michigan lottery winner. Okay, so I'm going to do a quick Google search on how to reverse a hex dump in Linux. There we go. Let's try that. Okay. Hex dump reverse command from Stack Overflow. Okay, doing a reverse hex dump. Need help with converting from hex dump. Oh, look at that. Reverse hex dump without XXD. So that's actually really important, because if you go back to the OverTheWire page for Bandit Level 12 to 13, you see that the commands on here, commands you may need to solve, of course, there's grep, there's sort, there's unique, things we've all used before, but you see XXD. That's a command that we haven't really delved into yet. So I'm going to pull back up our Linux terminal, our Kali terminal, and I'm going to look at the manual page for XXD, right? Is it XXD? I think that's right. Yeah, here we go. XXD. You can use this command to make a hex dump or do the reverse, which reverses the hex dump. And it looks like if we scroll down here, okay, so it can convert a hex dump, and this is why reading the manual pages is so great. It can convert a hex dump back to its original binary form. That's really important because that's what we need. We need to revert it and then continue decompressing it in order to get the password to get into level 13. So this is a bit of a longer level. But as we scroll down here, so first of all, at the top, it's actually right here. XXD-R for revert, options, the in file, and then the out file, kind of like the source and destination, right? So, and I am totally pointing at the screen with my finger and none of you can see what I'm pointing at. I don't know why the fuck I did that. That was asinine. That was really dumb. Okay, so first things first, let's revert the hex dump in order to get like the actual data. Okay. So there's something, well, I'll get there in a minute. So XXD-R to revert it back to actual data, the in file, and then the out file. Okay, so just ls to make sure we have hex dump right there. So what I'm going to do is XXD-R, the in file is hex dump, and the out file, let's just call it compressed. Let's do underscore pass. Because again, this is the data that's going to have the password in it, right? So if we run that, ls, okay, so you can see it reverted it, but it kept the original, and that's important to know. So we've got the original file, which is the hex dump right here, and then we have the compressed data, which is right there, okay? That's important to know. Now, I'm going to go back and I'm going to explain something. So if you do some research on hex dump data, and I'm not going to bore all of you with what the research is, okay? But if you do the research, or like with sitting here and reading through it with you guys, but if you do the research on hex dump data, you can actually understand that the columns that you get when you cat the hex dump actually gives you information. Okay, so it's hard to read, right? Because they're not typical strings or words that we're used to, but there's three main columns. The first column shows the address. The second column shows the hex representation of the data on that address. And then the last shows the actual data as strings. Okay. There are a lot of different hex editors that you can work on, but those columns are important to know, because you can use the hex dump data to figure out the type of file that it is. Okay, so each type of file has what's called like a magic, or each file type, I guess that's how you say it, has like a magic number with a file signature. Okay. So, and you can actually find lists of these different file type magic numbers, with their different file signatures online. Okay. So this is what I actually use. I know it's Wikipedia, but Wikipedia has like the list of file signatures here. Okay. And this is going to be really important. So you can see like the file extension over here. But this is going to tell us the type of file when it comes to decompressing it. Okay. So if I scroll down, and I'm kind of giving a shortcut because again, like I'm not going to bore you guys with the fact that I sat here and read through a lot of stuff to try to understand this. One thing we can do is, instead of scrolling through, we can actually use the find function on the browser that we're using to look at this list to try to match the string. So, okay. So basically, if I do head, for the hex dump file, okay, right here, remember I talked about like the 3 columns with the magic number. This right here, this is what gives us the file type. Okay, so 1F8B, it's this very first column right here, 1F8B. And again, this came from like reading through hex dump files, understanding how they actually work, you know, so on and so forth. But if I look at that, I can actually match it to the list that we have. So I'm back in Google Chrome, which is what I'm using. I'm going to hit Control F and I'm going to type in 1F8B. You guys aren't actually seeing that. There we go. Now there's a space in between, but 1F8B. What file type is this? GZ and tar.gz. Okay, so this lets us know this is a gzip compressed file. Why is that important? Because back in our Linux box, like if I cat the compressed password file that reverted the hex dump, this looks like gibberish. That's absolute gibberish. So we need to uncompress it, and we understand that reverting this right here, this compressed underscore pass, is a .gz file. Now, one of the things that we need to do is we actually need to rename it to give it that file extension. And you may have done this even in like a Windows machine, right? You've got a file that's a txt or a .docx, and you need to convert it to a PDF. You can just change the file extension on the end and it changes the file type. We're going to do that by renaming the file in here. So let's clear this up a bit, but ls, those are our 2 files. We need to keep the hex dump, but we've got the compressed pass. That's the reverted hex dump, and we need to uncompress that. So we just move compressed underscore pass to compressed underscore pass .gz. ls, right there, you can see this is now a compressed with GZ. Okay. Now, you know, if you looked back at the commands, or if you even do a quick Google search on just how to uncompress GZ files, you'll see that there is a command that's gzip. Gzip uncompresses it. And so, well, gzip can be used to compress or uncompress it. Gunzip is actually, gunzip is what I'm used to using. But you can use gzip. I think the argument is -d for, -d for decompress. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're just going to do gzip -d to decompress it. And we're going to put in the compressed pass.gz file. It doesn't show anything, which means there's no errors. That's a good thing. Man, it's turning into a long video. And we've got compressed pass again, but that file has been uncompressed. Okay. So, let's see. It's not fully compressed, so we need to look at the first bytes again. Okay, the first bytes, that file signature. We can use xxd to read that. So xxd, or to create a hex dump. Okay, compressed underscore pass. Okay. So we just created a hex dump of it. So, because remember, xxd can create the hex dump and it can revert the hex dump. We're using it to create a hex dump. It doesn't create a new file. It just prints out the hex dump of the file. But right here, we have 425A, another file signature. Okay, so let's go back to the list of signatures that we had open in Wikipedia. I did a quick Control F. On this page, I put in 42 space 5A because I noticed that on this page, they're like segregated by 2 characters each. Right here, I find BZ2, which is a compressed file using bzip2. Okay. So bzip2, and again, this is the file extension over here. That means the file is going to be .bz2. So that's how this one was compressed. So we need to, again, change the file extension. We need to move the file to be able to we need to rename it to have the .bz2 at the end so that we can uncompress it again. So we're back over here. I'm just going to go to the bottom, file name. Yep. Okay. So we're going to move compressed pass into compressed pass.bz2 because that's the file extension. It's done. Okay. Now we can uncompress it using bzip. Again, looking at the commands on the actual OverTheWire Bandit Level 12 website, you've got bzip2 as a command right there. So let's look at the manual page for bzip2. How do we decompress it? Okay, so let's see here. This is a lot more extensive. Right there, -D for decompress. I mean, that makes sense. It was the same thing for gzip2. It was just -D. Unbelievable. I probably could have guessed that, but it's important to verify. Clear this out, ls. All right, so we're going to do bzip2 -D compressed pass.bz2. And now we have compressed data again. Okay. Now we're going to do the same thing. So now that it's uncompressed more, we're going to create another hex dump that's going to print out on our screen using XXD of the compressed pass. Is that too many S's? No, I'm good. I know what I'm doing. I know what I'm doing. I got it. I got it. Right here, we did XXD. Oh, look at that. 1F8B. We already know that that means this is a gzip file. So we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do that we did before. We're going to do gzip. I don't know. We need to rename it. Sorry. MV compressed _ pass and rename it to compressed _ pass.gz. Let's clear this out a bit right there. Then we're going to do gzip -D compressed _ data.gz. Whoops. Oh, what am I doing? It's compressed pass, not data. What is wrong with me? Compressed pass. Always make sure you have the file names right. And there's compressed pass. Okay. So we have compressed pass again. So we decompressed it again. Okay. So we're getting close. All right. So if we do another XXD, if we create another data dump now of this uncompressed file, holy smokes, that is long. Okay. Whoop, 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 whoop. Let's Control C. Holy shit. Okay. My bad. That shouldn't, let's clear that out. Okay. Let's do XXD of compressed pass, and we're going to pipe that into head. So remember that head shows the first, what is it, like 10 or, 10 lines of data right there. Okay. So that way we're not getting the full thing again. That was insane. And again, we're going back to the very first line, the file signature 6461. Okay, so remember how I told all of you that I'm going to show you all the dumb stuff I do? You're definitely seeing it. So if you look to the right here, remember I told you at the beginning between the 3 different columns, the column on the right, the third column, because again, like this is this right here is the first column. All this data right here is the second column, and then this is the third column. This third column has strings, and you can see that there's something called data5.bin. Okay, data5.bin, that's a file name. Now, being that this is a file name, that tells me that this is actually an archive. Okay, so if you understand what archives are in Linux, an archive is essentially it's a single file that can contain multiple files, multiple directories within it. And so the great thing about an archive is that it compresses the data, but it's often used for things like just organization of files or specifically backups. Okay, so if I want to create a backup of, let's say, like, you shouldn't do this, but if I want to make a backup of the file that has all of the password hashes in it, I can put that into an archive. And archives in Linux, and I'm familiar with doing this. And again, like a lot of this just comes from like research, looking at the manual pages, working in Linux quite often. Archives come with a .tar extension, .tar. Okay. So in reality, we need to, now that we've seen, oh, this contains data5.bin, that tells us this is actually an archive. Let's rename the file again and give it the .tar extension. So mv compressed pass to compressed pass.tar. Worked. There's a .tar. And if you look at the manual page for the command tar, because again, tar is one of the commands that was listed in the OverTheWire page, the Bandit page. Right here, it's got all of these different options. The important thing is that the arguments for .tar -x and then -f, or if you want, you can do -xf. That decompresses the tar file. So the F actually stands for file or archive, right? That decompresses it and it pulls the data out. So that's a really important thing, is that -x actually pulls the data out. And you can read through all of this, but let me show you what I mean real quick. X for extract. Okay, so you're extracting the data from that file, but it doesn't get rid of it. So here's what I mean. So if we do tar -x for extract, F for the specific file, it's compressed _ pass.tar. Whatever files are located in this archive, it's going to pull it out in place here. So when I run that, and then I do ls, you can see right there was a file in there that was data5.bin. It pulled it out and it put it right in there. Okay, so now I can leave the compressed pass.tar if we want to, but now we've got this file that's data5.bin. Okay, so if you let's cat data, 5.bin. Data. Always make sure you type your stuff correctly. Again, that looks like absolute gibberish, right? Okay, I always do ls just to make sure files are still there. But if we do xxd, again, a hex dump of data5.bin, right? Because we're going through this process. Gosh, son of a bitch. Okay. And we pipe that into head so that we only get the first 10 lines. Oh my God. Look at that. Okay, so if we look right here on the right-hand side, there's data6.bin. Okay, so that tells us this is another archive, right? So we need to extract another file. Okay, so let's do tar -xf data5.bin, and we ls, there's data6.bin. Okay, cat data6.bin, gibberish again. Okay, so that doesn't have the password for us. Let's do another hex dump of data6.bin. Thank God it wasn't a ton of different lines this time. Okay, so doing a hex dump of data6.bin, what do we see? Again, 425A. And we've seen that before. What's that a file signature of? Because we don't see anything here in the strings. I don't see a file name. But right here, what's that a signature of? That is a signature of the bzip, right? bzip2. So we can do bzip2 -d for decompress on data6.bin. bzip2 can't guess original name for data6.bin using data6.bin.out. So we have data6.bin.out. That's okay. If we cat data6.bin.out, damn it, red. Gibberish. So let's do a hex dump of that. data6.bin.out and pipe that in the head so that we don't get all that crap again. Look at that. data8.bin. What does that tell us? That tells us that this is an archive. So we can run again tar-xf data6.bin.out. List it. There's data8.bin. Okay. If we cat data8.bin, it's gibberish, but it's less gibberish, which means we're getting there. Okay. So again, we've got data8.bin. All right. So let's do the hex dump of data8.bin. Pipe it in the head. We've got 1F8B, and we all know what that is. That is a gzip file. Okay. So let's decompress that one last time. All right. So let's do, let's move it right to rename it. So data8.bin is going to get renamed to data8.gz. There's data8.gz. And remember, gzip-d is how we decompress it. Data8.gz. ls. There's data8. Now let's try cat data8. Red. Oh my gosh. Sorry, everybody. Finally, right there, that's the password. Okay, so that is how we solve OverTheWire Bandit Level 12. We have the password. I'm going to copy this and put it in my notes. Remember, we have our notes, so I'm going to do nano notes.txt. There we go. And that's the password to be able to get into level 13. In my little OverTheWire directory that I've got. So this was a long one. And they may only get longer as we go through the process, because I know there's some videos I put out there that are like 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes. This is a long one. But the important thing to know is that this is part of the process with a lot of these capture the flags. And, you know, you're learning about compressed files, archives, what the heck is a hex dump, you know, how to be able to look at the signatures of the hex dump. And a lot of this, like, I cut this down because I didn't want to bore all of you, but a lot of this, and I showed you the research that I do, but a lot of it is reading through this documentation, doing research and reading through what are hex dump files, you know, reading through the manual pages of these different commands. And that's important to know because that gives you the tool set to be able to work with things as you move into the realm of whether it's cybersecurity, InfoSec, you know, ethical hacking, or even like security systems administration or security engineer. you know, a lot of us do a lot of our work in the Linux environment. This is important to know, you know, or even just doing capture the flags to keep your skills sharp. So there you go. Next up, we will hit level 13. Level 13.